Captain Cade frowned. Sir, public sentiment is shifting. Even within our colonies, people are questioning this. They think we've become what we hated. Rourke turned to the viewport, a wall of black, scattered with distant firelight. No, he said. We've remembered what we are. The galaxy tried to domesticate us. We're just reminding them evolution doesn't take orders. Outside, Terran ships refueled, rearmed, and vanished again into the void. The war was no longer about territory or politics. It had become something primal, a reckoning written into the DNA of a species that had finally run out of patience. The rain never stopped falling over the ruins of Geneva habitat. Acid rain, faintly luminescent, the planet's atmosphere still scarred from old industrial wars. Dr. Liana Veras stood beneath a cracked transit dome, watching the holographic skyline shimmer with false sunlight. Somewhere high above, Rourke's warships moved unseen through orbit. To most of humanity, Elias Rourke was a savior. To her, he was the inevitable outcome of a wound left untreated for generations. Liana had been 6 years old when the VARC Consortium's soldiers marched through Luna City, repossessing human infrastructure under Concord law. She remembered the sound of plasma rifles echoing through hallways. She remembered her father's voice. Patience. Liana, one day they'll see we're worth trusting. They never did, and now... Patience had turned to fire. Her research team at the Earth Systems Institute had been studying biogenic nanites, microscopic machines capable of rebuilding ecosystems destroyed by war. The project was meant for restoration, but the military had different plans. Within weeks of Rourke's first strikes, the Institute's funding was seized. Her data was encrypted under classified defense application. That night, she broke into her own lab. Rows of containment pods flickered blue as she pulled data cores from their mounts. She wasn't stealing them, she was saving them. The Terran Navy could weaponize her work into something catastrophic, and she refused to let humanity repeat the same mistakes as their conquerors. As she loaded the drives into her hoverpack, a familiar voice came through the comlink. Dr. Veras, this is Captain Cade of the Vengeance. You've been summoned to Sol Command. Liana froze. Under what authority? Admiral Rourke himself. He says you're about to do something important. The comm went dead. Hours later, a black shuttle descended through the storm clouds. 2 armored Marines escorted her aboard without a word. The moment she stepped inside, the air smelled of steel and ozone, the scent of war made real. When she entered Rourke's command chamber, the Admiral didn't look up. His gaze remained locked on a holographic map of the Concord's defenses. Doctor, he said finally, you're interfering with a classified operation. I'm saving what's left of humanity's conscience, she replied. Rourke turned then, his eyes cold but alive with conviction. Conscience didn't save Titan. It didn't stop the Keruvians from burning our cities. I'm not asking you to approve of this war. I'm asking you not to slow it down. You're not fighting for justice, she said. You're fighting to hurt them back. And if you keep going, we'll become the monsters they always said we were. For a moment, the great war hero said nothing. Then he stepped closer, voice low and measured. Maybe monsters are what the galaxy needs to remember why it feared the dark. The guards moved to escort her out, but Rourke raised a hand. Let her stay aboard the Vengeance, observe, record everything. When history judges us, I want someone honest to tell the story. She didn't know whether it was arrogance or faith, but she stayed. From that day forward, Dr. Liana Veras became the silent witness of the 6-day war. Her recordings would one day serve as the only unfiltered account of humanity's fury and its price. Outside the viewport, the stars shimmered like sparks in the void. Somewhere among them, 1,000 fleets were converging, and deep within her heart, Liana whispered a prayer that the stars would remember mercy, even if humans had forgotten how. Day 3. The galaxy's rim burned like a halo of dying suns. For every alien world that fell silent, 3 more armed themselves in desperation. The galactic Concord's Grand Armada, 9,000 ships drawn from 42 species, now gathered in the Arcanus sector, preparing to strike at the Sol system itself. Rourke knew they'd come. He wanted them to. The Vengeance hovered in high orbit above Callisto, surrounded by hundreds of Terran vessels, destroyers, stealth cruisers, and old cargo hulks now retrofitted with plasma lances. A war born from centuries of suppression was now balanced on the edge of one plan: Operation Iron Star. Captain Mara Cade stood beside him as holograms displayed troop formations and flight paths. 9,000 ships, Admiral. We're outnumbered 40-1. Rourke nodded slowly. Good. That means they'll be overconfident. Dr. Liana Veras watched silently from the observation deck, the war reflected in her eyes. She had spent the last 2 days trying to understand the man behind the legend, the human who had turned patience into apocalypse. But watching him now, she saw no madness, only grim certainty. "Sir," she said quietly, stepping closer, "if this fails, Earth will burn. Billions will die." Rourke didn't look at her. "If it succeeds, there will never be another war like this again." He turned to the bridge. "Begin Iron Star." Across space, Terran fleets activated synchronized drives. 1,000 warp signatures bloomed like sparks across the void. In the Arcanis sector, the Grand Armada's sensors lit up, hundreds of unidentified signals flaring in every direction. "Decoys," said Admiral Crix of the Concord. Primitive but clever. He was wrong. The Terrans hadn't sent decoys. They'd sent ghost fleets, automated drone swarms powered by stolen alien AI, each mimicking full battle groups. The Armada fired on them, wasting gigatons of munitions on empty signatures. While the Concord wasted precious time and energy, Rourke's real strike force emerged from behind the gas giant Iridan 9, using its magnetic field to mask their approach. From Liana's view on the Vengeance, the sky erupted. Thousands of glowing streaks arced through space, railgun fire, plasma torpedoes, kinetic slugs, colliding with a storm of alien counterfire. The void itself seemed to scream. "Human Fleet Alpha engaging at Vector 216, shouted Cade. "Enemy capital ships moving to intercept." "Hold formation," Rourke ordered. "Don't chase. Make them come to us." And they did. The first Concord battle line, 200 ships of mixed Corruvians and Vark, plunged straight into the ambush. Hidden Terran mines detonated in synchronized sequence, tearing entire cruisers in half. Human corvettes darted between the wreckage, their hulls ablaze with the reflected glow of their victims. But for every alien ship destroyed, humanity paid its price. The TNS Callahan was vaporized by a plasma storm. The Osaka's reactor went critical, taking 3 enemy frigates with it. Liana felt each explosion like a heartbeat fading out. Still, Rourke didn't flinch. He stood motionless, watching icons flicker and vanish across the holographic map. Each one a life. Each one a choice he'd already accepted. After 6 hours of combat, the unthinkable happened. The Grand Armada began to break formation. The Concord's coalition, built on centuries of fragile alliances, fractured under pressure. Species blamed each other mid-battle, arguing over command authority as their ships burned. Cade exhaled in disbelief. "They're retreating." "Admiral, they're actually—" "Not yet," Rourke interrupted. "They'll regroup. We're not done until their leaders kneel." He turned to communications. "Patch me to every human ship." The bridge lights dimmed as thousands of channels opened. Across space, battered pilots and bleeding Marines heard his voice, calm and unshaken. "We've waited our whole history for this moment. Every insult, every treaty, every cage they put us in ends here. You are the proof that humanity endures. Make the stars remember our name." Then the Vengeance surged forward, the flagship itself joining the front line. Liana gripped a railing as the ship shook from recoil. The viewport filled with fire and debris, but through the chaos, she saw something almost beautiful. Fleets of humans. Once scattered and divided, now moving as one, united not by fear, but by defiance. The 6-day war had reached its breaking point. And in the heart of it all, Admiral Elias Rourke was no longer fighting for survival. He was fighting for legacy. The Corruvians had a saying, "To know the enemy is to lose your hatred." Lieutenant Tarek Velroon understood that truth far too late. He'd been raised on stories of Terrans, savage, emotional creatures who'd nearly destroyed their own world. His academy instructors called them the unfinished species, clever enough to build weapons but too primitive to wield them wisely. When the war began, Tarek volunteered immediately. He wanted to see the beasts caged once and for all. Now he floated among the wreckage of the Grand Armada. His ship, the Vrax Halor, had taken a direct hit from a Terran rail slug. Half the crew were dead. The rest drifted in silence, power failing, comms jammed. Through the cracked viewport, the void glowed with the remains of both fleets, fragments of human and alien hulls spinning together, indistinguishable in death. Tarek's translator implant crackled to life. Unidentified vessel, this is Terran medical frigate Mercy 1. We are offering aid to survivors of the Arcani's engagement. Do not attempt to fire, he froze. Aid? From humans? His surviving crewmate, a Vark gunner missing half her mandibles, hissed weakly. It's a trick. They'll harvest us. But then the Terran ship appeared, white hull scarred by battle, lights flickering. Its insignia wasn't the Terran Navy's burning star. It was a blue circle, the old Earth emblem. When their airlocks connected, Tarek raised his sidearm. He expected soldiers. Instead, a human woman in gray armor stepped through, her hands empty. Lieutenant Velroon? She asked, voice calm through the translator. I'm Commander Juno Kane. You're safe now. He aimed shakily. Why would you save your enemies? Because not all of us want this war, she said. And maybe some of you don't either. Her eyes held no hatred, only exhaustion. For the first time, Tarek wondered if humanity's fury had been earned. They brought him aboard the Mercy 1. The corridors were filled with wounded, Terran and alien alike. Medics moved wordlessly, treating everyone the same. A Karuvi child, rescued from a civilian transport, clutched a Terran officer's hand while machines hummed around them. Tarek's entire education collapsed in that moment. These were not monsters. They were us, mirrored through pain. Later, as he sat in the medbay watching stars crawl past the viewport, Juno returned with a data pad. The Admiral doesn't know we're out here, she said. If he did, this ship would already be ashes. But someone has to show what humanity really is, not what they've been forced to become. Why tell me this? He asked. Because someone on your side has to listen. Her words struck deep. For generations, the Concord had warned that humans could never coexist, that their ambition would consume everything. Yet the evidence around him told a different story, a species capable of mercy in the middle of madness. He took a slow breath, mandibles trembling. If I deliver your message, they'll call me a traitor. Juno smiled faintly. Then maybe the galaxy needs more traitors. As the Mercy 1 drifted through the debris field, collecting survivors from both sides, Tarek began recording a private log. His first entry was simple. The humans are not what we were told. Perhaps none of us are. He didn't yet know that his transmission, a plea for ceasefire, would later reach Dr. Liana Veras aboard the Vengeance, intertwining their fates in ways neither could imagine. Day 4. The Terran Armada drifted in orbit above the shattered moons of Arcanis. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but the victory felt hollow. Hundreds of ships burned silently across the void, their wreckage forming a glittering graveyard. Dr. Liana Veras stood in the command observatory, staring at the debris. The Vengeance's crew celebrated below decks, but she felt no triumph. Each flash of light out there was a funeral pyre. Then the encrypted message came in. A young technician rushed to her console, whispering urgently. Doctor, we've intercepted something. Not Concord, not one of ours either. You'll want to see this. The transmission was audio only. The voice that emerged was alien, rough, low-pitched, hesitant. To anyone who will listen, I am Lieutenant Tarek Velroon of the Karuvi Defense Fleet. I was saved by a Terran ship. They showed mercy. This war, it doesn't have to continue. I ask whoever receives this, remember what you're fighting for. Liana froze. A Karuvi officer thanking humans for mercy? She replayed the message 3 times to be sure it wasn't forged. Then she took it to Admiral Rourke. He listened in silence, face unreadable. When the message ended, he turned slowly toward her. "Where did this come from?" "Encrypted relay." "Origin unknown," she replied. "But it's real, sir." "I verified the signal signature. That ship, Mercy 1. It's one of ours." Rourke's expression hardened. "A traitor." "Or a hero," Liana said quietly. "Someone who remembered what humanity used to stand for." The Admiral rose from his chair, the lights of burning ships flickering across his scarred face. "Doctor, we didn't start this war to earn their forgiveness. We started it to make sure no one ever enslaves us again. Compassion can wait until the galaxy stops aiming guns at our children." "You can't rebuild civilization on ashes," she said. "Watch me." He turned to Captain Cade. "Find Mercy 1, terminate its command structure." "No survivors." Cade hesitated for the first time. "Sir, with respect, that's a hospital ship." "Not anymore. It's a liability." The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. Then Rourke left the room, his footsteps echoing down the steel corridor. Liana turned to Cade, voice trembling. "You can't follow that order." "I don't have a choice," the captain murmured. "But maybe you do." That night, Liana made hers. Using the encrypted relay, she responded to Tarek's signal, transmitting coordinates coded through civilian channels. "This is Dr. Liana Veras aboard the Terran flagship Vengeance. If you can hear me, your message was received. There are still people who want peace. Stay hidden. I'll find a way." Her heart pounded as she sent it. One trace of that signal, and she'd be court-martialed for treason. But destiny had already moved beyond laws. 2 hours later, alarms blared across the Vengeance. "Unauthorized transmission detected," shouted the comms officer. "Source unknown." Rourke stormed onto the bridge. "Trace it." Before they could, the main viewport flashed, dozens of alien distress beacons lighting up across the sector. Concord survivors, responding to Tarek's broadcast, were trying to surrender. Some even began transmitting ceasefire codes, and then the twist. A Terran battle group, the 7th Fleet, refused Rourke's command to open fire. Their captain, Old Admiral Hossein, appeared on a secure line. "Elias," he said softly, "you taught us to fight for our species. But you never said we had to lose our souls doing it." Rourke's jaw tightened. "You're disobeying a direct order." "I'm honoring a higher one." The transmission cut off. Moments later, the 7th Fleet broke formation, escorting surrendering alien ships out of the combat zone, Mutiny, in the middle of humanity's greatest victory. Liana watched Rourke's composure crack for the first time. Not from fear, but heartbreak. The war he'd built was no longer his alone, and in that silent moment, the galaxy changed direction. Day 5. The galaxy had seen countless wars, but never one that turned inward mid-battle. The 7th Fleet's defection shattered the illusion of unity across Terran command. The human armada, once a spear aimed at the galaxy's throat, now twisted against itself. Half the captains refused to fire on their own. Others demanded punishment for mutiny. Every encrypted channel burned with accusations, pleas, and the slow crack of faith breaking apart. From her quarters aboard the Vengeance, Dr. Liana Veras listened to the chaos through the ship's comm feeds. She heard captains cursing, soldiers arguing, one man sobbing as he confessed he couldn't tell who the enemy was anymore. Humanity had built its war on vengeance, and vengeance was devouring it from within. When she reached the command deck, Admiral Rourke was already there, surrounded by officers shouting over one another. Tactical hollows flickered red with warning symbols, human ships aiming at human ships. Cade tried to cut through the noise. "Sir, the 7th Fleet has engaged our rear guard near the Iridon Belt. They're protecting the surrendering Concord vessels." "Orders?" Rourke's jaw clenched. "Contain them. Disable if possible. No lethal shots." That answer surprised everyone. "Sir," another officer said, "they're traitors. They're giving the enemy safe passage. They're ours." Rourke snapped. "Every man and woman out there is still human. Don't make me kill what I swore to protect." The bridge fell silent. Then, quietly, Liana spoke. "You can still end this." Rourke turned, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. "You think I don't want to? You think I like watching everything I built tear itself apart? I think you're afraid to admit you've lost control." He didn't answer. Instead, he motioned to Cade. "Prep the flagship for intercept. We're going after Hossein ourselves." Cade hesitated. "Sir, that's suicide." "That's an order." Minutes later, the Vengeance broke from formation, engines flaring blue as it dove toward the Iridon belt. Massive asteroids drifted through the void, their shadows long and silent. Amid the rocks, flashes of gunfire painted the darkness. Human against human. The 7th Fleet held position around a cluster of disabled Concord transports, ships filled with survivors from the last battle. They didn't fire unless fired upon. When Rourke's flagship arrived, the channel opened automatically. Admiral Hossein appeared, his face ghostly in the hologram light. "Elias," he said, "if you've come to kill me, do it fast. I won't let my people fire on you." Rourke stared at him. The man who had once been his mentor, the one who taught him the art of strategy when humanity was still licking its wounds after Titan. "Why?" Rourke asked simply. "After everything they did to us?" "Because I've seen enough graves to know revenge never fills them," Hossein replied. "You wanted the galaxy to respect us. Now they'll only remember our cruelty." "They'll remember that we stopped being victims," Rourke growled. Hossein shook his head. "No, they'll remember that we couldn't tell mercy from weakness." Before Rourke could respond, alarms blared. The Concord reinforcements had arrived, smaller fleets, desperate and uncoordinated, but ready to strike both human factions at once. "Admiral!" Cade shouted. "They're closing in on both sides. If we don't act, everyone dies!" Rourke looked at the screens. Terran ships firing at Terran ships while alien cruisers closed the trap around them all. The perfect irony. Then, slowly, he took a deep breath. "Patch me through. All channels." 1,000 comm lights blinked green. Across both Terran and Concord frequencies, his voice echoed through the static. "This is Admiral Elias Rourke. All Terran forces, cease fire. All Concord ships, hold position. You came here to destroy us. You succeeded. But if any of you still want to live, stop shooting long enough to see what you've done." For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, gradually, the firing stopped. Flaming wreckage drifted between fleets like silent witnesses. The only sound was the hiss of cooling reactors and the slow hum of life support systems struggling to keep up. Hossein's voice came over the private channel. "That's a start, Elias." Rourke didn't answer. He just stared into the void where the ghosts of 1,000 battles seemed to float. The war wasn't over, not yet. But something inside him had cracked. Liana stepped beside him. "You did the right thing," he sighed, eyes heavy. "The right thing always comes too late. Outside the stars burned on, indifferent, eternal, as humanity stood on the edge of its own reflection. Day 6. The ceasefire lasted exactly 3 hours. 3 hours of silence, drifting among the ruins of 2 fleets that had nearly annihilated each other. 3 hours for every survivor to stare at the wreckage and wonder what the war had truly been for. Then the conquered dreadnought ascendant emerged from hyperspace, massive, ancient, and bristling with weaponry. It was the last surviving supercapital of the enemy, commanded by the warlord who had started it all, High Archon Vurek Sal, the monster of Koruvi legends. The man who'd once broadcast human prisoners being executed in orbit to remind the galaxy what fear looked like. Now he was here to finish it. Within minutes, the fragile standoff collapsed. Concord cruisers rearmed, Terran ships scrambled into defense grids, and all the quiet promises of peace burned up in a single transmission. "Terran vessels," came Sal's voice, deep and resonant. "You claim to fight for freedom, yet you bring only ruin. Today, I erase your name from the stars." On the Vengeance, Admiral Rourke stood unmoving as red alerts pulsed across the command deck. Cade's voice cracked over the alarms. "Sir, the Ascendant is charging its primary cannon." One shot could vaporize us and half the fleet. Rourke didn't respond immediately. His gaze lingered on the holographic map. Thousands of signatures, human and alien, all trembling on the brink of mutual annihilation. "Bring us forward," he said finally. Straight toward them. The bridge went dead quiet. "That's suicide," Cade whispered. "Then we die making them remember us." Liana stepped in front of him, blocking his view. "No, not like this. If you fight now, everything we've tried to save dies with you. Let me talk to them." Rourke looked at her as if she'd lost her mind. "Talk? To him? He slaughtered our colonies. And you burned his cities," she shot back. "You're both ghosts fighting for graves." For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other, two souls carrying the entire species between them. Then Rourke exhaled. "You have one transmission." Liana nodded and stepped to the comm. Her voice, calm but trembling, filled the void. "Hi, Archon Sal. This is Dr. Liana Veras of the Terran fleet. We've both lost enough. You have your vengeance. We have our shame. But there's nothing left to win except extinction." There was a long, static-laced pause before the Archon replied. "You speak of peace after burning my worlds. Why should I listen?" "Because you're still listening," she said softly. "That means you haven't forgotten what mercy sounds like." The line fell silent again. The fleet waited. The Ascendant's weapon core continued to glow, brighter, brighter. Then Saal said, "You are brave, human. But bravery does not erase blood." The glow intensified. Cade shouted, "Weapon charge at 90%. Rourke gritted his teeth. "Arm everything we've got. If he fires, we fire back." But before the final sequence could complete, a new voice interrupted the channel. Hoarse, faint, but familiar. "This is Lieutenant Tarek Velrun. Aboard the Concord ship Mercy 1. I stand with the Terrans." Sal's tone turned to fury. "Traitor!" Tarek coughed. "Maybe, but I saw them save lives. Yours wouldn't have." Then another signal appeared. And another. Concord ships, small patrol vessels, hospital carriers, refugee transports, all activating under Tarek's encrypted signature. "We refuse to keep dying for pride," said one alien captain. "We choose to live," said another. One by one, ships from both sides powered down weapons. Some turned their hulls broadside, a gesture of surrender. And then, something no one expected happened. Sal's dreadnought stopped charging. In the silence that followed, his massive ship turned slightly, its cannons shifting away from the Terran fleet toward the drifting wrecks between them. He opened a new channel. "Perhaps mercy is not weakness," he said slowly. "Perhaps it is the weapon neither of us has learned to wield." Rourke's hand hovered over the firing control. One push, and the monster who'd haunted humanity for decades would be gone forever. But he didn't press it. He turned to Liana, and for the first time since the war began, his voice broke. "I can't undo what I've done, but I can stop it here." Liana nodded. "Then stop it." Rourke opened the channel. "All Terran forces must stand down. Effective immediately. The war is over." The words rippled through the network like thunder. Across the battlefield, engines cooled, lights dimmed, and soldiers wept in disbelief. And for the first time in 6 days, there was peace. In the stillness that followed, Liana looked out across the stars, at the wreckage, the ghosts, and the faint blue glow of life returning to silence. Humanity had broken. But maybe, just maybe, that was what it needed, to rebuild something better. 3 weeks later, the battlefield at Arcanis had become a graveyard, but also a monument. Derelict ships still floated in orbit, stripped of weapons and power, their hulls etched with both Terran and Concord emblems. No one had the heart to clear them. They were a warning written in steel. On the surface of the fractured moon below, humans and aliens worked side by side, engineers repairing communication arrays, medics tending to survivors of both species. It was a strange sight, former enemies trading tools instead of bullets. The 6-day war had ended, but its echo still haunted every conversation. There were no victors, only survivors. Dr. Liana Veras stood beside the ruins of an old Terran outpost, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the twin suns rose. For the first time in years, they looked beautiful, not like targets. Behind her, Admiral Elias Rourke approached quietly. He no longer wore his uniform. The insignia had been stripped from his chest. The man who once commanded humanity's fury now walked with the weight of every life he'd taken. "They're calling it the Shatter Peace," Liana said without turning. "Because it's fragile. Because it could break again." Rourke nodded slowly. "Peace always does." "They want to put you on trial," she added after a moment. "I know," he said. "And they should." Liana finally looked at him, eyes tired but not angry. "You ended the war." "I also started it," Rourke said quietly. "History won't care which came first." For a long time, they just stood there, watching the horizon brighten. Distant gunships, now used for transport and aid, crossed the sky like dark birds migrating to a better season. A small group of Concord soldiers passed nearby, saluting Liana as they carried medical supplies. One of them, tall, scaled, with bright amber eyes, stopped briefly. "Dr. Veras," he said in halting English, "Lieutenant Velroon wishes to speak with you when you can." She smiled faintly. "Tell him I owe him more than I can ever repay." The alien bowed his head slightly and walked on. Rourke watched them go. "Funny," he said. "We fought them for freedom. Turns out they were the ones who reminded us what it means." Liana smiled sadly. "Maybe that's how it's supposed to end. Not with one side winning, but both sides remembering." Rourke didn't reply. He just looked out toward the horizon again. After a while, he said, "You know, when I gave that final order, I thought I'd feel empty, like I'd lost everything I built. And now?" He took a deep breath, the wind carrying the dust of 2 civilizations across the ruined plains. "Now I think I might have saved what was left of it." Liana nodded. "That's enough." The suns rose higher, casting gold light across the battlefield, turning wreckage into mirrors, steel into silver rivers. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was quiet. And somewhere, in that fragile silence, humanity began again. They called it the war that shattered the galaxy. But those who lived through it, the engineers, the soldiers, the medics, the refugees, knew it by another name. They called it the 6 days of humanity's reckoning, not because of the destruction, but because for the first time in recorded history, humanity looked at the monsters it had been fighting and saw itself staring back. Across the stars, new treaties were signed. The Terran banner, once a symbol of vengeance, now hung beside the Concord emblem in stations rebuilt from both fleets' wreckage. And somewhere among those ships, a single transmission kept repeating, a voice archived forever in the galactic records. "Mercy is not surrender. Mercy is survival." Dr. Liana Veras, the message spread faster than any weapon ever had. Planets that had once sworn to annihilate each other began exchanging aid convoys. Children who'd grown up under propaganda now studied history side by side. And the veterans, those who had seen the abyss, taught them that peace is not given. It is chosen. Every single day, Admiral Elias Rourke's name was never cleared, but neither was it forgotten. His statue stands at the edge of the Arcanis Memorial Field, not as a hero, not as a villain, but as a man who bore the weight of both. In the end, humanity didn't conquer the galaxy. It conquered itself, and that, more than any victory, is what changed everything. The universe doesn't break because of hate, the narrator's voice fades out. It breaks because we forget why we fight. And maybe, just maybe, we've remembered. If you want more stories like this, where humanity fights not just the stars but its own reflection, subscribe, because this is only the beginning.